Hey, my name is Tiara Koya, and today we'll be talking about mucosal immunity. So, what is mucosal immunity? So, mucosal immunity is immunity that protects the gastrointestinal, bronchiopulmonary, genitourinary, mucosal barriers, and the skin immune system. This is extremely important because like we've been learning in these past few weeks, we don't want to um, ultimately get sick, or we ultimately don't want to get sick, and we also want to um, have a very effective immune response to pathogens that we may come in contact with in our day to day. So, we have IgA antibodies, which are a huge part of the adaptive immunity in mucosal surfaces. So they account for a large portion um, of mucosal surfaces, and they are ultimately dependent on T helper cells um, that work with cytokines such as IL-4 and IL-10 to ultimately promote B cells to switch to IgA through differentiation. And this is important because um, if this does not occur, if there's a deficiency, then patients with mucosal deficiency ultimately do not get the protection that they need and are at a high risk of allergy or autoimmunity. So if there is deficiency in IgA, IgM, and IgG can replace part of IgA and establish a second line of defense. So we also have mucosal vaccines, which have been around for years. So we have the oral polio vaccine, which ultimately produces antibodies in the blood in helping to prevent the spread of poliovirus in the nervous system. But it also has been shown to produce an IgA immune response in the intestinal mucosa, which ultimately is the site of poliovirus entry and multiplication. So we can see that this has a huge and will continue to have a huge impact on how um, intestinal mucosa is treated. So from there we have cholera vaccines, which essentially use an active form of V. cholera to provide protection and immunity against exposure to cholera. From there, we have typhoid vaccines, which again prevent typhoid fever. And the one that is commonly known is influenza and pneumonia vaccines. Um, these ultimately provide protection to the mucosal surfaces of the lower respiratory tract. So we have macrophages and dendritic cells and mucosal immunity. Like we've been learning about toll receptors, R RIG receptors, NOD receptors. Ultimately, these are receptors in the mucosal immunity that can recognize bacteria, fungi, and viruses. Um, and specifically in innate respiratory immunity, we have alveolar macrophages, which really work very well with type 1 interferons during viral infection to control the infection. An interesting fact that I came across is that aging in lung immunity. So it has been shown that adults who are 65 and over typically are at a higher risk of respiratory pathogens and account for 90% of mortality associated with influenza and pneumonia in the United States every single year. So it is shown that impaired immune response leads to a decrease in key mucosal cells, that ultimately can help protect against disease. And then finally, we have bile acids and irritable bowel syndrome. So it has been shown that bile acids can provide uh, can potentially provide effective human therapy in the near future. Um, Specifically, a secondary bile acid called UDCA that has been known for many, many years and that has shown to improve the healthy bacteria in the gut, which is typically seen in patients with IBD. So that is all for this week, and I just look forward to learning more, and I hope that you have enjoyed. Thank you.